Hey, what's going on, guys? David Schlace back here again with Two Guys Build a Biz. In this video, we're going to talk about getting that first social media marketing agency client, the Holy Grail. Before we jump into that content, there's a little subscribe button down in one of these two corners. Would love to have you guys be a part of our community. Would love to have you along for the ride. On this channel, we share free tips, tricks, methodologies, ways to deliver better services, acquire more clients, and make more money for your agency. So we'd love to have you be a part of it. Now, let's jump into the purpose of this video, which is talking about getting that first social media marketing agency client. Now, on the front end, you need to be prospecting, okay? Prospecting, sales 101 is always a numbers game. The more contacts, the more connects, the more conversations, the more meetings, the more deals closed, period. That's true across any industry. That's sales 101. The more activity that you have, the more calls that you're making, the more emails, the more doors that you're knocking on, the more LinkedIn emails that you're sending, the better your chances are going to be of closing a client. And I'll tell you this, the first client is always the hardest. We sell a course, it's called the SMMA Blueprint. There's a link in the description if you want to check it out. But we've had a lot of students, and it's always the first client that is the most challenging for them. But with our systems, with our processes, Derek and I were able to close our first client less than 2 weeks after we started our agency, and that was without the resources that are available today. Our students in our course are getting so many clients in the first 6 weeks that they've actually been able to leave their jobs because they're running six-figure businesses. Now, those results are typical, they aren't the anomaly, and there's a reason for that. So let's talk about some of these very simple processes that can set you and your agency up for success. Now, let's talk about prospecting, okay? So there's a number of different ways to go about prospecting for a social media marketing agency. There's cold calling, there's cold emailing, there's knocking on doors or going door to door, actually visiting the physical locations of businesses. There's using LinkedIn, and then there's actually DMing, different businesses through the different platforms like Facebook and Instagram. So let's talk about cold calling. Now, cold calling is what Derek and I used basically first to grow our agency. It was what we've been doing for our jobs before. It was what we knew. And it's a great way to, really get your feet wet and kind of learn how to pitch these services. And it's going to do you a lot of good when you move to the later stages of the sales cycle, when you're having more meetings and you can feel more confident because you've been through the school of hard knocks that is cold calling when you're having those meetings down the line. So to be effective at cold calling, you really need to have a large list. So what I would recommend is go into Google local search or the yellow pages, or with a library card for a lot of people in the US, at least, there's a database called Reference USA that you have access to. Both, all three of those are great places to source very large lists of businesses that are in whatever niche you're looking to target. Get a list of phone numbers, and basically what Derek and I were doing when we were working full-time jobs is over lunch, I'd have a list of 20 to 30 businesses, and as many calls as I could get through in that hour, I would call. And I'd get a lot of connections, and we'd be setting up meetings for outside office hours or the next lunch break or, whatever. Additionally, I was traveling a lot. So I was, basically whenever I wasn't having meetings in these other cities for the company that I worked for, I'd be hitting these call lists, during business hours and seeing as many as I could possibly get through. Really, you want to be talking in multiples of 100, hundreds of calls, not I made 5 calls. You want to say I made 100 calls and I made this many connections, and that's really what it's going to take. So, kind of the ratio that we saw was for every 100 cold calls that we made, we'd probably have, between 8 and 10 live conversations, 5 to 7 of which were with decision makers, 2 to 3 of which turned into qualified meetings, and then we'd close, 0 to 1 deals. So every 200 calls that we made, we on average close between 1 and 2 clients, okay? So those numbers are great. It's just, it can be challenging to keep those numbers up. And for those of you that have never done cold calling before, who don't have somebody, looking over your shoulder, it can be a challenge and it can be very intimidating. So let's talk about number 2, cold email, okay? Cold email is a fantastic way to basically have a very scalable way of hitting a number of touch points. We use a solution called GMass. There's a lot of different automation platforms that you can plug into G Suite for your Google email for a very limited cost. You can also do what are called mail merges through Microsoft Outlook and Word, which is kind of cumbersome and I wouldn't really recommend. So if you haven't already set up your agency email, would definitely recommend G Suite for this reason, because there's these great lightweight plugins that you can use to send out a very high volume. Now, we teach you ways to basically use these different resources that I talked about to source very large email lists on autopilot, so that with a click of a mouse, you can send out hundreds of emails every single day without a huge investment of time. In the course, again, the link is in the description. If that's of interest to you, would definitely say check that out, but you don't have to have that to start cold emailing. We didn't have these processes when we first started our agency, and every Saturday and Sunday, Derek and I would actually sit down and have a contest to see who could get the most manual emails out. We actually closed one of our largest clients to date by manual email, just by Google local search, going and finding the email, and then emailing the business owner. So there's great ways to do that. Just to really take it to that next level and aggressively scale, you might want some automated processes, which is why we teach that in the course. But cold email is a great way. The beauty of it is that you don't need to pick up the phone and have live conversations. You can handle objections and the normal stuff that you'd have to do on the phone on a live call through email. You have more time to think about it. It can be less intimidating for those of you that have never really kind of been through the prospecting process before. So I would definitely recommend it. Let's talk about the third, okay? Knocking on doors. Again, great way to get live conversations, but it can also be challenging because, it's not even over the phone anymore. You're looking somebody dead in the face. And, if you haven't done that type of sales before, it can be intimidating, but I would encourage you to do it. It's a great way to learn very quickly your pitch, and how to be comfortable in those situations, because a lot of clients eventually might want you to go, on site or to have, virtual meetings. We work with clients all over the world and we do a lot of virtual meetings with them. So a great way to kind of learn some of that is through cold calling, and additionally through visiting the actual physical location of businesses, even though it isn't necessary all the time. But it can be a great way to do prospecting. I remember when we were first getting started, Derek and myself would actually, if we drove past a business that was in our niche, we'd very quickly pull them up on our phone, take a look at their social and digital footprint, see if there were any holes that we could poke in that strategy. Then we'd actually go into the location and say, hey, we run a social media marketing agency. Who runs the social media for the business? And get to the person making those decisions, and then tell them about the issues that we had uncovered and see if there was a way for us to work together. So again, awesome way to basically do prospecting by going door to door. The fourth is through the DMs of Facebook and Instagram. Basically, a lot of the times for a lot of small businesses, unless they are already working with another agency, the business owners, the people that actually have the admin access on those accounts. So by DMing them through those accounts, you have a decent chance that person might be the person that's making the decisions around social media marketing, that's actually seeing those messages come through on their end. So it can be a great way to get direct to that business owner and say, hey, I don't know if you saw this, but I saw your post and the targeting's way off, or this type of content doesn't really perform that well on this platform. Here are a couple of other ideas. We run a social media agency. Would love to talk to you more in depth about how to better utilize this platform for your social media strategy. So that can be a great way to kind of cut above the noise. You're not in their email, right, where they're getting all kinds of other stuff. They're getting invoices, they're getting orders, they're getting customer complaints, they're getting all the email lists that they're already subscribed to, and then there's you in this noisy inbox. You can take it off that inbox and into potentially a more quiet platform where they aren't getting as many messages and can really kind of differentiate a little bit. The next platform that I want to talk about, and we actually sell a course on this, is LinkedIn. So traditionally, LinkedIn was kind of a B2B professional platform, but more and more people, there's billions of users on it now, and it's growing. There's hundreds of millions of users, I believe, and their target is, I think, 1.6 billion users in the near future. LinkedIn is in a massive, massive, massive community at this point, and more business owners and decision makers are active on that platform on a daily basis. We actually have been doing a lot on LinkedIn for a long amount of time. I've actually built out business development teams. I've been using LinkedIn in my professional life for almost a decade, and I've really seen the maturation of the platform. And Derek and I have kind of called it the Facebookization of LinkedIn, because not only are there the types of ads that you can run on LinkedIn becoming very close to what you can do on Facebook with behavior and interest-based targeting, but they're really making that news feed, more attractive, where professionals of all kinds, not just B2B, but business to consumer, more lifestyle, local businesses, are actually finding that platform to be a meaningful place to congregate and to use. So we actually teach a course on specifically how to use LinkedIn for prospecting. We call it LinkedIn high ticket. It actually, these methodologies, once we started using them for our business, helped us multiply the average client size that we were working with by 5 while doing 5 times less work because they were more desirable clients because we found them through the LinkedIn platform. So if using LinkedIn for prospecting is desirable to you, as of the publishing of this video, it's only $250. That price will go up in the near future. So if you missed that, hope that this video is still valuable for you, but would love to have you be a part of our LinkedIn high ticket course. It's been paying dividends. We had one student, Nick, actually find it so valuable that he had to stop using the processes because his agency was just growing too fast, and he had to put in team members to basically be able to fulfill all the work and all the clients that he was bringing on board. So LinkedIn can be an extremely powerful tool, especially when you have the types of methodologies that we teach in the course, but you don't necessarily have to have the course to really start hitting it out of the park with LinkedIn and start getting some clients for your agency using that platform. So those 5 ways of prospecting are a great way of getting, the numbers up. Think of hundreds and hundreds of outreach. Think of hundreds of LinkedIn emails and connections. Think of hundreds of emails going out. Think of hundreds of cold calls, and make sure that you're doing all of those. We don't just say, hey, Derek, we're only doing LinkedIn prospecting now. Like, I'm still sending emails, I'm still making cold calls, I'm still visiting businesses, I'm still using LinkedIn, I'm still DMing. Basically, any opportunity that I see to monetize and make money, I'm going to take it, period. And so should you. So any chance that you get to use any of these, make sure that you're using them, that you're keeping your numbers insanely, insanely high. If I and Derek can do it, when I was traveling 3 weeks a month, and only, having an hour here, an hour there to make this stuff happen, and I was able to quit my job along with Derek after only being in business for our agency after 6 months, you can too, guarantee it, okay? Now, so we've got the prospecting out of the way. Let's talk about, how to have effective meetings with these prospects so that you can move it forward and create a proposal that they can't possibly say no to. So the single most important thing that you need to know is you need to know how much money this business is missing out on by not working with you. This is something that a lot of them oftentimes haven't really thought about themselves. And usually when we ask this question, it's kind of an eye-opening, moment for them where they're like, man, I didn't even think about that, right? So we call it putting the money on the table, okay? So what you say is, so right now, how many more clients or how many more customers or how many more sales or how many more members could you have in your business without, needing to increase your square footage, hire more staff, or basically increase your capacity? And then whatever that gap is how much money they're missing out on in a set period of time. So if it's, hey, I could handle 100 more members per month and each member is worth, $30, that's, $3,000 that they're missing out on, every single month by not working with you. So if your total fees are $1,000 to work with you, but you're delivering an additional $2,000 per month, in income for them, then it's a lot more attractive to, basically be, working with you. And it's a lot more, the cost justification for your retainer is there. It's a ROI, a return on investment for them, right? So you want to do what we call getting the money on the table. Those numbers are usually far, far greater than that. Usually it's not, we're going to make $3,000 more by working with you. It's, we're missing $50,000 per month, right? Or we're missing, at least $10,000, all of a sudden $1,000 retainer is like this tiny little piece of the puzzle. And if you can map a strategy that says, well, in order to basically realize that revenue and close that gap of all this money that you're leaving on the table by not being at capacity, we're going to do Facebook ads, we're going to do email marketing, and we're going to capture all these leads so that we can remarket to them and bring them into your business. How does that sound? And it's only going to be $1,000 a month. These are the missing pieces in your strategy. And that's why it's so important. One of the most common objections that we hear is, or we're already doing, digital marketing, or we already have, a strategy for Facebook. And usually that means that they're like posting to Facebook or they're boosting a post. So you can do a lot of discovery in these calls and basically get an understanding of like why it's not working so well for them. So basically, in terms of our process, without going too deep into it, we do outreach where we have a cold call or a cold email or what have you. Normally, if we connect with them live on the phone during a cold call, we will essentially introduce ourselves and our agency. We will find out if they're currently doing any type of marketing services, if so, what, and then we will position for what we call more of a discovery call or the needs analysis call, where we can take a deeper dive into their exact strategy and basically find out all those things that they're doing wrong currently so that we can put together a great strategy that they can't say no to, because we know how much money they're missing. And when we basically have that cost justification I just talked about, it makes a lot of sense for them in their business to work with you. So getting an understanding of that, but not having that deep dive on that initial call, unless they want to. Don't get me wrong. We've had calls where I've made one cold call, taken it all the way to the house and closed that deal on that first call. But normally we're positioning for that discovery call or more of that needs analysis call, because we're usually catching them smack in the middle of their day and we don't want to be rude. The other outreaches, though, is all typically written unless we're visiting the location. And I should say too, if we're visiting physically, it's much like the initial cold call in that we're not going to take an hour of their time when we visit them out of the blue and they have other things to do. We're going to ask for another time that we can chat with them for that needs analysis discovery call. But if we're doing it through LinkedIn, if we're doing it through email, we're going to set up that initial call, and we're going to go straight into that needs analysis because we have time boxed off on the calendar to have a more in-depth conversation about what they're doing in the social media space. And that's kind of the front end strategy, and that call is really to get all that information I was talking about. How much money are you missing? What services are being provided to you, or are you doing on your own currently? And then we set up what we call a proposal review. Derek and I will put our heads together. We will create a proposal, and it basically talks about our agency, talks about their goals that they told us. Obviously, they want to close that gap of revenue that they're missing out on. And their growth goals and what they want to be doing in the next year or two. And then we basically map a strategy to that says these are the services based on our call that we provide as an agency that are going to help you close that gap and hit the business objectives that you want to be looking at. And then, finally we talk about the price, and it all makes sense because we've already gone through all that. So that's it at a high level. We cover that much more in depth in the SMMA Blueprint course that we sell. Again, the link is in the description. But that should get you well on your way just in terms of how to do outreach prospecting, how the sales cycle works in terms of how we tee up those different meetings. And then, if you want more, if you want to basically